Welcome to On Our Watch, a podcast about coastal erosion and sustainability in Louisiana. My name is Marian Evans. I'm a filmmaker and a producer of the documentary On Our Watch, a feature-length film that examines Louisiana's coastal land loss crisis and the ways in which it impacts our communities, industries, and culture. The film's director, Jonathan Evans, and I are proud to produce this podcast series that will continue to explore issues facing the Louisiana coast through conversations with local residents, community leaders, and experts. In this episode, we're speaking with Khai Nguyen. Khai is the co-executive director for the Song Community Development Corporation, a nonprofit organization that works to improve the quality of life of residents in New Orleans East. And now, our interview with Khai Nguyen. Well, thank you, Khai, for taking the time to talk to me today. So you are the co-executive director for the Song Community Development Corporation. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the mission of Song CDC and the type of work that you all do for the New Orleans East community.
Yeah, so Song Community Development Corporation is based in New Orleans East. We are rooted in the Vietnamese American experience, but we pursue the full liberation of BIPOC communities to improve the quality of life for folks in our community. Our work encompasses environmental, workforce development, business development, senior housing, and any other gaps in service that we feel that the community needs. And so we've been around for 2 years, but we have our staff, we've been connected with the community in the same kind of work since Hurricane Katrina, basically.
Okay. And so how did you get involved with Song CDC? Were you there from the start?
Yeah, so I grew up in New Orleans East in the Vietnamese community out there. And I basically got into this type of work after the BP oil spill. And so we were helping a lot of Vietnamese fishermen. There are a lot of Vietnamese folks in the seafood industry, of course. And over the years, I've been working in a nonprofit. And so 2 years ago, we started this organization. So I was a part of that from the beginning, just to continue the similar kind of work to help the community and to kind of see where the development needs are.
Right. Is that something you kind of always wanted to do, kind of like give back to your community where you grew up?
I think that's what I realized when the oil spill happened. And obviously Hurricane Katrina was a very traumatic time as well. And so that's another time where we saw a lot of need. But for me, growing up at that age, the oil spill was not happening right after I was graduated from college, not really knowing exactly what I was doing. But I knew that there was a need. And so I just started volunteering with some local organizations to help. A lot of the folks that were in need were people that I was familiar with just because growing up in the community. And so I got involved at first helping them do translations and of things and for folks that don't speak English well, like Vietnamese folks that don't speak English well, fishermen that needed to help through some kind of a compensation process with the oil spill. So yeah.
Right. And so how would you describe the population that Song Community Development Corporation serves, and what are some of the challenges that they face?
Yeah, so we are based in New Orleans East, and so a lot of times we are considered helping the Vietnamese community, but that's not explicitly the case. Of course, we're visible because of that, but New Orleans East is beyond just the Vietnamese community. It's also and when I say New Orleans East, I was meaning Village de l'Est. But just in Village de l'Est itself, it's a mix of African American, Vietnamese, and Latino residents, and so we, have to make sure that our services are impacting everyone. And so, so we know that there are gaps in services. Obviously, language is an issue, not just Vietnamese, but Spanish language. Since Katrina, there's been a large influx of Latino and Spanish-speaking families, so we see the need for that. And so we try to make sure that we're not excluding anyone. All of our programming and projects are inclusive of all the folks that are involved in our community.
Yeah. And so how is New Orleans East in particular affected by Louisiana's coastal climate?
So I would say a lot of folks are maybe not realizing how close we are to the water. And I think like if you go from where our community is to Chalmette, there's a pretty high bridge that goes through the industrial canal, I believe. And you just see like we're surrounded by water. So I think there's a lot of education that we can provide. Like, hey, there are serious risks about land loss, erosion, things like that. Vallecales in general actually is one of the highest areas of with the highest rates of subsidence in the city. And so if you go around the Michoud area, you'll see houses that you can basically see under their foundation because of how much the land has subsided. Another thing, as I mentioned earlier, about the amount of folks that are in the fishing industry, so that's being heavily affected right now by, all different factors, the sediment diversion projects, land loss, all of that are affecting shrimpers, are affecting people in the seafood industry. So it's coming from a lot of different fronts that are affecting the folks. And so, but and then just in our community, subsidence aside, like something that we deal with that the rest of the city also deals with is just stormwater, street flooding, things like that. And so, and we're definitely seeing higher instances of those things, just as like the rest of the city is seeing as well.
Yeah. And so, can you tell us a little bit about some of SONG CDC's environmental justice programs and some of the ways in which you're working to build green infrastructure in New Orleans East?
Yeah, so we are developing a project or it's actually in progress now, but with several partners. One is Civic Studio, who does a lot of green infrastructure community engagement planning. Healthy Gulf, Batcher, an engineering company, some other community leaders as well to bring together. We want to really create a grassroots process where the residents kind of inform decision makers and people that are in authority, like how we have several projects. One is we're looking to do a completed New Orleans East community water plan, and with the organizations I mentioned to really like get people together to understand living with water, to create a plan to inform decision makers about what kind of projects we need in our communities. Part of that is another project that's in process now, is our Waters by You project, and it's a way for us to get community members to kind of reimagine living with water in our community. So New Orleans East, there's a lot of canals. In Vallecales, especially, we're surrounded by water, surrounded by lagoons, and we also realized that like most of our canals, they're fenced off. There's our waterways are fenced off. There's not really a place for they're not viewed the same as some other places like Bayou St. John, where people can go and like have a good time, use that as a recreational space. That's not the case at all in New Orleans East, and so one of our projects is to help people to kind of like reimagine how can we transform our canals from being like just a eyesore in our community to become a resource. So we had a field trip for some folks to come out to Bayou St. John, did some kayaking out there to get some folks to kind of think a little bit differently about how we can we have this in our community. It's connected to a project that is funded by the EPA that we are leading around building green infrastructure to mitigate water pollution. And so we could easily be like, hey, we just choosing a few spots in our community. We're going to test for water here. We're going to build a green infrastructure, and that's it. But we really wanted to have it as a community community engagement project. So like folks go to the site, choose the sites, design out the green infrastructure, and at the end of the project, probably by next spring, to actually build out the green infrastructure. And then following that, we want to see, with water quality testing, if there's a possibility that the infrastructure is impacting or reducing any of that pollution. And so with that, we are in the process of doing several workshops. Actually, our second workshop is this coming Saturday. And we have a group of like 20 to 25 community members that are learning, and hopefully at the end of the workshop period, be able to build out some really cool things.
Yeah, that is really cool. Do you find that the New Orleans East community has been receptive to these projects?
Yeah, I think so. Doing this for a while, you definitely see like familiar faces that are like very active and very. They're very concerned citizens, and then, our community, we're not strangers to environmental justice issues. Post Katrina with a landfill, trash dumping and things like that, tire dumping. So there are a lot of concerned community members seeing that, hey, like New Orleans East, we're kind of basically a dumping ground. Like, how do we take charge, like empower ourselves, and like really, get into deciding for ourselves some of these projects. And so, the New Orleans East Water Plan, community water plan that I mentioned earlier, is a step in that direction. But yeah, you definitely see really folks that are really passionate about it. And I think New Orleans East in general there's a stigma, with New Orleans East, but we're trying to, overturn that, show that there are really, really great things out there and great possibilities out in the East.
Yeah, definitely. And so I know earlier this year, Song CDC was named one of the winners of the Greater New Orleans Foundation's Next 100-Year Challenge, which is very exciting. What does that mean for your organization, and can you tell us about some of the plans you have in place from that?
So this is similar to what we're trying to do in New Orleans East around climate resilience and all of that. But we have been working with a neighborhood on the West Bank in Algiers. There's a Vietnamese community out there also, and it's around the St. Joseph's Church. And the community leadership there is called Hung Dao in Vietnamese, but they have access and basically control of a 6-acre site. And the city also has a few acres as well. And the plan is, well, the need is, there's this site, it's kind of overgrown. There's opportunity to do climate resiliency projects there, like a water parks, repairing buffers, things like that, and demonstration sites for folks to understand about stormwater management, recreational spots for folks. So yeah, we're really thankful for Greater New Orleans Foundation. They've been a huge supporter of ours for a long time. And this is a good opportunity for us to kind of expand what we're doing in the East to this community on the West Bank. And so, yeah, it's a very exciting, and the grant will help us do kind of like community scoping to get people to get together to really provide their voices in what they want that space to become. And we've gotten partnerships with the city. Forgive me, but I don't know I can't think of the exact city office, but I think this is the hazard mitigation office, I believe, that is going to work with us on that. And yeah, it's exciting. I think it's going to be really, really nice. There's been plans in the past to develop this space, but I think there was a lack of capacity that this grant's going to help us with. And so hopefully, that'll springboard us into a little bit more funding for actually build out of some of these ideas. But, we're getting ready to kind of open up the scoping process, get community members involved, tell us exactly, share with us, what exactly they want to do with this space.
That is very exciting. I love how you guys get everyone involved with all your projects. So one of the other issues that you guys deal with is access to quality foods. And I was wondering if you could speak about what are the barriers to having proper access to quality foods in New Orleans East, and how are you guys working to combat that issue?
So we also run the Veggie Farmers Cooperative. So it's a project that actually was started after the oil spill. But currently we have a few farmers and a community farm in the Village Les community. We sell our produce at farmers markets to restaurants and a CSA box. So our community in New Orleans East, I would consider it a food desert. For a long time after Katrina, there wasn't easy access to a supermarket, at least. You have your small grocery stores, like mom and pop grocery stores, but nothing with a lot of variety or anything like that. And so there's now like a Walmart maybe in the community. But for a while, there weren't really many options. But for us, I think we want to make sure that it's easier or it's more easily accessible for folks to be able to get healthy produce or healthy food items. So our farm, we've been, and COVID had a lot to do with it. Hurricane Ida had a lot to do with it. But there were a lot of relief programs, relief funding that came out during that time. And one of the programs that came out allowed us to pay our farmers, but provide the food that they produce for free to families in need. And so we've been able to stretch that out until now. We're still in that process of doing that. We're hoping to continue that. But basically, we have been able to get produce from a farm, work with several different organizations, different housing developments to provide between 20 and 40 families each week with fresh veggies from our farm.
Wow, That's awesome. Do you guys have any big goals or future projects that you'd really like to see Song Community Development Corporation accomplish?
Yeah, I think like one of the things that we've been seeing is the need for housing. One of the things that we want to do is our community is aging. Throughout the city, there's kind of a brain drain, to other places, but in our community especially. But we want to make sure that the folks that stay, and there are a lot of people that want to stay, they've built a community here for decades, 50, 60 years. This is their home. And so we want to make sure that they can age in place. There's services and amenities and programming for them. And so that's one of our biggest wants in the near future is senior housing development, to kind of take care of the folks that have really established themselves here and want to continue their community here.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Khai, I really appreciate you talking to me today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to On Our Watch. We hope you enjoyed our discussion with Khai Nguyen. Don't forget to subscribe to On Our Watch on your favorite podcast app to be notified about future episodes. You can also watch a video version of this podcast on YouTube, which you can find a link to in the description. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back with another episode next week. This podcast is made possible through grant funds from the Greater New Orleans Foundation and executive produced by Bruno UK Steiner.